One of the most intriguing and controversial stories of alien encounters I've come across is the story of the Flatwoods monster. In the 1950s, a small town in West Virginia, 6 boys aged 10 to 17, a dog, and a mother all witnessed a strange and terrifying monster. A friend of the boys who witnessed this later said they were also frightened one of the boys peed his pants and their dog ran away with his tail between his legs. The story begins on a dark and stormy night in 1952 in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia. A group of children were playing in their schoolyard when they saw a bright object streak across the sky and crash on a nearby farm. Curious and excited, they ran to tell their mother, Kathleen May, who decided to join them in their quest to find out what it was. Along the way, they met up with a few other boys and a National Guardsman named Gene Lemon, who had a flashlight. They reached the top of a hill, where they saw a pulsing red light in the distance. As they approached it, they noticed a foul smell in the air. There was an odd mist that would persist. Lemon pointed his flashlight at the source of the light and was shocked by what he saw. There was a towering creature 10 feet tall with a spade-shaped head, glowing red eyes, a metal suit, and claw-like hands. It was then upon being noticed that the creature turned and hissed at them and glided towards them. The group panicked and ran down the hill, screaming for help. They reached the town and alerted the authorities, who came to investigate. The investigators found no trace of the creature, but what they did find was some skid marks in an oily substance on the ground. They also went on to interview the witnesses, who gave consistent descriptions of what they had seen. The witnesses even drew pictures of what they saw. And then the story made headlines across the country, and it attracted the attention of UFO researchers and skeptics alike. Some people believe that the Flatwoods monster was an extraterrestrial being that had crashed on Earth and was trying to escape. They pointed to the strange appearance of the creature, the metallic sound it made, and the evidence of a landing site. They also claimed that there were other sightings of similar creatures in the area around that time. The U.S. Air Force, who have since revealed that they've done UFO research and investigation since 1947, collecting thousands of stories and investigating some with a skeleton staff, said about this one that they concluded that bright but common meteors had streaked across the eastern U.S. at dusk that night, seen by many in Baltimore among other places. But they laid the claim that the monster that was witnessed was just an owl. Owls have been claimed to be mysterious sightings of other cryptids, namely the Mothman prophecy story. They can grow rather large, however, they don't grow 10 feet tall large. The glowing eyes, well, that could be light reflecting in an owl's eyes. And if the owl was on a branch 10 feet in the air, there is a way something could be mistaken for that height. But the witnesses described what the creature was wearing, and I don't know any owls that wear metallic-looking clothing. Could the feathers reflect enough light to give off the impression of metallic clothing? Well, an owl does have claws, but if these witnesses claimed it was 10 feet tall, and they were mistaken with this as an owl, the claws would look awfully small and oddly close to the head and body of the creature. It wouldn't be in proportion to a 10-foot tall creature. So I don't exactly buy the owl story, personally, even with a fear-induced group hysterics. Not to mention that there were others who then reported that they too have seen this monster. A woman named Audra Harper, who lived 5 miles north of Flatwoods, said she was walking through the woods with her friend when she saw a fire on the hills. They didn't think anything of it, but she glanced back over her shoulder, and when she did, she saw the dark silhouette of an eerily tall man emerging from the spot where the flames were. Another set of witnesses, a young couple driving on a country road 20 miles south of Flatwoods, had their car break down on the road. George and Edith Sanowski were with their 18-month-old son and were trying to get their car working as it started to get dark. It was then they smelled a sulfur-like odor, and suddenly a bright light lit up the sky. When they looked up at it, there was a 10-foot monster hovering in the air, with clawed hands and a reptilian head. That's right, a lizard person. The creature touched their car and then drifted into the woods. Suddenly, the couple's car roared to life. Was this an owl too? Now, it's odd that 3 different groups of people saw similar creatures on different nights. The owl cover story given by the government is almost laughable, I'm going to admit. What's not laughable is that we know in the 1950s and 60s that the US government tested biological warfare on unsuspecting Americans. In 1950, they sprayed San Francisco with a rare bacteria that caused people to die. The people weren't told of this, and in total, the US government revealed that they had intentionally doused 293 different populations with bacteria, and they did so without informing the public. And those are the ones we know about. How can we be sure it was all just bacteria? We also know the government was using things like Agent Orange and MK Ultra program to study the effects of mind control and psychedelics on humans, on their own people. It would make sense the official ruling on this case would be something as ridiculous as miscategorized owl. It's more likely this could have been an area that was sprayed with some sort of bacteria or fungi that could cause hallucinations in some people. That would account possibly for the mist and odd smell, maybe even the tar-like substance that was found. And if this is the case, kind of makes you wonder about that old swamp gas explanation that was paraded out for other UFO witness encounters. Maybe it was gas, but not swamp gas. There's always an element of truth in these stories, and often it's hidden in the wide open. Mysteries and stories like this take on life of its own and mythology because a lot of these people do really feel like they see something. If you look at psychedelics and psychedelic trips, often the report of people on these trips say that what they experience and what they see seems more real than real. Is it possible that in the history, and possibly even to this day, that there's another explanation for a lot of these sightings? Could it be that there's some sort of psychedelic that's being given to people that's making them experience these sort of paranormal experiences or cryptids? Now, some of the explanations always go on to say it's some sort of mass hallucination or mass psychosis, that the environment around the time where the government was testing nuclear weapons and there was a lot of UFO stories, that there was this sort of cultural hysteria around these sort of events, and that's what leads people to see these types of things. But maybe it's a little bit more sinister than that. Maybe that's the cover story. Maybe that's the convenient psyops. Maybe that's why we were fed so many alien stories and fear about nuclear holocaust. Maybe it was the government experimenting on its own people, giving them psychedelics or spraying psychedelics or spraying bacteria or fungi that would lead to some people having a reaction that would cause them to hallucinate. It's not that far off of expectations. Like I said before, we know the government was doing this. Now, you would think that if these things were actually happening, we would see a lot more. And maybe we don't see a lot more is because the limited amount of sightings would point towards more of the limited amount of experiments that were done on humans and Americans. And you could say that other governments around the world are doing the same thing, taking a small subset and doing experiments. And some people react to some of these substances with hallucinations. It induces fear because they can't tell what they're seeing, or it gives them a reaction, and the fear induces them to see certain things that feel really real. They can describe it, they can draw it, they can see things just as a psychedelic who goes on DMT can see machine elves. They can describe them, they can talk to them, they have a real vivid experience. So it begs the question about all of these stories. what you would want to do is start to correlate some of these places where the American government did do these experiments. Of course, I don't think we're ever going to get the full truth on that and the data that would let us correlate some of these events. So I do think some of these have an earthly explanation. I think UFOs are probably, if we want to get into that, are probably not those hallucinations, but the aliens probably are. It really brings out an interesting way forward to start looking at some of these cases. Maybe we really need to start looking at what the true cause is. But I don't know. What do you think? Was the monster really an alien, or was it a government experiment? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out a small channel like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.